The following podcast is sponsored by Luminary Leaders, Sadat and Associates, and Connected Women of Influence. Enjoy the episode.
Welcome to the podcast. My name is Shelly Harrison, and you're listening to Speaker Central. On this episode, we talk about how to lead beyond influence and create a legacy with my special guest, John Ramstead. Welcome to this episode of Speaker Central, powered by Luminary Leaders. I'm your host, Shelly Harrison. Each week, I open the conversation with my guests to unravel their perspective, solutions, and get into their mindset of business. We break down their expertise to give our audience actionable steps and content to apply in their own businesses. Catch all of our episodes on your favorite podcast platform. Subscribe, follow us on YouTube, Facebook, LinkedIn. You're going to find this episode on all of your favorite podcast shows. Our insightful topic today is Beyond Influence. And my special guest is John Ramstead. And I'd like to introduce him. John, thank you so much for coming on the show today. And I'm going to read your bio.
Sounds great, Shelly. Thanks for having me.
Oh, thank you for being here. And first off, I'd like to thank you for your service too. I know that you dedicated much of your life to the service, and we absolutely appreciate that, and that of your family. So thank you.
Thank you for saying that. I appreciate that.
Well, my pleasure, and it's an honor to have you on the show. So John is a former Navy F-14 combat pilot, leadership coach, international podcast host, and author of the Top 100 Leadership blog for executives, managers, and CEOs. So again, John, I'd like to welcome you to the show. And if we could start by having you share, who is John? And I would love for you to kind of touch on your story too, because you have a very powerful story.
Well, thanks, Shelly. Yeah, I'd start with the fact that I'm a husband. My wife and I have been married for 30 years. We met at a bar in college. And I remember when she walked in and I saw her in the back of this bar, I remember thinking, oh my goodness, I am too young to meet you yet. Like I knew. So now it's 30 years later and we have three amazing boys, 23 years old who's married, a 21-year-old who's also a father now. I told you about my grandson earlier, and a 16-year-old boy who's almost 6'6", 225 pounds. He's amazing. He's a monster. But anyway, during coronavirus, we actually were all here, all seven of us, for 3 months. It was for us. It was one of the best things ever. Our family came together in a way I didn't, as adults, didn't think possible. So that's a little bit about me. That is just important. We cooked together and laughed and talked and planned. And so that's a big part of my life. And, it's one of the most, I think, important things, that and friends. And so just a little, how about this? I'll give you just a quick backstory and you can ask me any questions that you want. So I had a dream as a kid to be in the Navy. My dad fought in World War II. My grandpa had just immigrated here from Norway and signed up to fight for this country in World War I and was in some of the biggest battles. That always really impressed me.
Yeah.
That, here's somebody here who's been here for 2 years, could barely speak English, and he signs up to fight for this country back in Europe.
Gosh.
That
is extraordinary.
Isn't it though? He was an ammo runner, which is, they were the biggest targets for the enemy snipers. He was small and fast, but he died when I was 4. I just really wish I had been able to get to know him as a person. But my dad just passed away this spring at 93, and he lived an amazing life.
Heart. Wow.
Yeah, so interesting, doing a funeral during coronavirus. But
my goodness.
I got to give the eulogy. It was stream. Well, thank you. You know what, Bo? He lived such an amazing life, and he was just a huge blessing. Anyway, that was a big part of when I was young. So I knew I wanted to go in the military. I applied to the Naval Academy, but I also got a ROTC scholarship. So I went to Rensselaer Polytechnic, got a degree in engineering, got into Navy flight ram. Top Gun had just come out when I was in college. So boy, that actually made it really hard to get into flight school. Everybody was applying, but I was very fortunate to kind of make it all the way through. But anyway, 7 years into flying, I did combat tours in Desert Storm, and I get orders to go to Top Gun. My commanding officer calls me to a stateroom. I couldn't be more excited. Well, first of all, my heart fell because whenever the commanding officer calls you to a stateroom, it's you're like, oh boy, what I do wrong? You're like, oh boy, did I do this? Did I do that? Did I say the wrong thing? So he tells me I'm going to Top Gun. I'm totally excited.
My gosh.
Literally floating out of there. Like, this is a dream come true. And a week later, I was playing softball with our squadron team. And I got drilled in the right eye with a line drive softball, and I blew out the back of my eye socket, had nerve damage.
Oh, wow.
Lost my medical, and I had to get out of the Navy. So that, I got to tell you, that was a really difficult transition when your dream gets ripped away. My identity was that as a pilot at the time. But it was, it was through that some men reached out to me and started mentoring me, people I didn't know, that I'd been introduced to, and they helped me figure out what I was good at and what I should do and find the right job. And I got to tell you, it just showed me the power of getting involved in the lives of other people. Our company's name is Beyond Influence. Think about 3 people who didn't know me, who are all very successful in business, that took time for somebody that, just some kid, I was 27, to sow into me. And what they did 30 years ago in my life is making a difference today. Think about that.
That's profound. That really is, when you really stop and think about it.
So we have that ability to be that person in the lives of others. Imagine if every single one of us actually had a boss that was that kind of person. Imagine if every one of us had an aspirational goal to be that kind of person for the people around us. Because I've worked for some people, Shelley, that's not who they were. That's not who they were at all. So I got out of the Navy, couldn't find really a job that I liked. And a friend of mine called me and said, hey, let's do a startup together. I'm like, done. So I moved back to Minnesota where I grew up, built that
you grew up in Minnesota?
Oh, you betcha.
Oh my gosh. Okay. So my husband is a diehard Minnesota Viking fan.
Oh, good man. That speaks to his integrity and his character. So I have friends of mine from Wisconsin that are Packers fans I just don't understand it. But anyway, that's a whole nother topic. So anyway, had a business, we built a business, a software company. We grew it, I think at the time, Shelley, my net worth on paper was $14 million going into 2000, right? Like I was dreaming about the future, and then the crash happened in 2000. Within 90 days, that company was gone.
Wow!
So not only was it
just
gone,
just like that.
And the paper net worth was gone. But I had this huge hole. Everything I owned personally was invested in that company.
Oh my! And
I had to rebuild again. And then so I did another technology startup. We got acquired by a Fortune 100 company. I ended up being on their management team. Then I decided to pivot from technology to Wall Street. And then I did that for 7 years, had just a great run. That's actually what brought me here to Denver.
Yeah.
And in 2011, I decided I was going to start something else on my own again. I wanted to build something again. I loved building teams and organizations and adding value. And so with some people I got to know here in Denver, we started our own company in the spring of 2011. And 5 months later, I had an accident that would end up putting me in the hospital for 2 years.
Oh my goodness.
And it was almost 3 years until I could get back to work. So I started this company only because I had a severe traumatic brain injury. So
I was going to say, what, if you don't mind me asking, what was that situation that happened where you were in the hospital for 2 years?
Well, I was doing a lot of work in the community and with nonprofits, and I got invited to a retreat that was up in Montana for a group that I was doing some work with. And we came in on Thursday, and what we were supposed to do on Friday was the horseback ride to the back of this property. I don't know, there's about 15, 16 of us, and I'll have lunch. And I was the first one saddled on a horse. And I'm not a horse. Are you a horse person?
No.
Okay. Yeah, me either. I've done the trail rides, right? That's what I was expecting.
Oh.
So my horse starts trotting, which was not comfortable because I didn't know to stand up in the saddle. Like I'm bouncing on this, and all of a sudden he bolts 90 degrees and he takes off, and I'm laying flat on my back, and his rump is pounding me in the shoulder blades, and I'm scared to death. I'm going to flip off of the back of this horse and get kicked in the head and die.
Oh my gosh!
So I did the only thing that came to my mind was that squeeze my legs as hard as I can. Now, your people listening that are horse people will realize that I did the worst thing possible because that's telling a trained horse to accelerate. and he hit full afterburners. Like he's like, you got it. And he found another gear. And I was able to get my weight back up on this horse. And we are at a flat out run.
My gosh.
And we're heading straight to a steel corral fence in front of me.
Oh, no.
And it was clear off the left. So I grabbed the rein to get him to turn, and I pull on his head. And he pulls his head straight back. It doesn't even break stride. I'm like, oh, no.
Oh.
I'm supposed to turn. So I grabbed the rein, and I pulled even harder this time. And he pulls his head straight back again. And I literally panicked. Now, I've been in combat. I've been shot at. I've raised 3 teenagers. Right? Like, nothing prepared me for this. Like, I literally started to panic. Like, I could jump on this horse. If I jump on this horse, I'm going to break my neck. If I break my neck, I'm going to die. I don't want to die.
Lots of thoughts going through your mind.
And I literally froze. And about 20 yards in front of the fence, I remember, like, everything slowing down. We're still at a full gallop. And I remember thinking very clearly,
oh my gosh,
this is not going to end well. That's the last thing I remember.
Oh my goodness. Yeah.
So he came to the fence, and he bucked so hard, he flipped over and slammed to the fence rump first. And when he did that, I went Superman straight into the fence. I literally crushed my entire left side of my skull. I broke every bone in my head except for my jaw and my right cheekbone. I shattered 8 teeth.
Oh my goodness.
I broke my neck. I shattered my left eye socket. My shoulder was destroyed. And then the next bar down, to add insult and injury, hit me in the chest, and I broke 4 ribs and punctured my left lung.
Oh my goodness. Wow. And here you are. Look at you today. I mean, how are you having, just being that it's been, a few years, how are you feeling now? Are you able to have...
I am not back to even where I was. I'll just be candid, right? I woke up on the ground into more pain than I could even describe. After the accident, I ended up in ICU for 5 weeks. They had to do 2... I ended up having, over the next 2.5 years, 2 craniotomies. 23 surgeries, 2 craniotomies there in ICU. Then I went to a specialty hospital here in Colorado just for traumatic brain injury. I was there for 20 months. I had to see speech. I had to learn how to talk again, speech therapy, occupational therapy, physical therapy. Now, what we found out afterwards, Shelley, that what happened to me was literally not survivable. The amount of brain damage was massive. Suffice it to say, I can tell you the whole details, or if somebody listening wants some more, just let me know. But I had one of those experiences when you're in God's presence and you're brought to heaven, and he says, it's not your time yet.
Wow.
And you're going to be healed. Because I found out later there was literally 3 doctors that told us, I cannot explain why you're here right now. It is not medically even possible. In best case scenario, you should have been like Christopher Reeve.
Wow. That's
right.
I mean,
I also broke my neck. I broke C2 and C4 in my neck. I should have been like, a high quad.
Yeah. And I mean, just the paralysis of, what that could do, and, going through all of the surgeries and everything. How did your family handle that? 'Cause I know, your wife and 3 boys.
It was my wife came up to Montana. She was beside my bed every day for 5 weeks. It was way harder for her. Anybody out there that's been a caregiver for somebody, I'm medicated, right? I'm dealing with, getting through maybe the next 5 minutes. She's trying to think about our finances, our kids. What do we do next? She was staying at home, homeschooling our kids. And also when you have a severe brain injury like I did, that front left lobe is your emotional control, your rational thoughts, your executive functions. So I was not the person that she or my kids remembered.
Gosh.
My brain couldn't process stimuli. I would get angry. I had no emotional control, right?
Yeah.
Kids would come in and do something that I thought would, bounce a basketball, and I would just fly off the handle, screaming and swearing and having no idea that I'm doing something wrong. What I would tell you today, though, is this has been now 8 years since the accident. It's been a long journey, but the amount of, I guess, reconciliation, redemption, and healing that has happened in our family is absolutely beyond anything I'd ever hoped for. Like I told you, that's why I thought COVID for us was amazing.
Now it
because
makes total sense.
Like our family is so close. My wife and I, we walk around holding hands. Me and my boys are my best friends. So I got to tell you, but let's think about this though, right? I was 45 years old when the accident happened.
My goodness.
It should have been my funeral. I remember laying there in intensive care when the doctor came in to tell Donna, we have to do the first brain surgery. We got to take John's skull off, and we got to try
Oh
to
my
fix
gosh.
everything.
What a scary thing for a wife.
Oh,
Or
well,
or any spouse that, that's going through that with their significant other.
well, imagine this, Shelley. He
Yeah.
looks at my wife and says, "Does John have a will, and does he have a living will?"
Oh my gosh. That I would
And
just break down. I would
so we
just
had
break
actually just
down.
updated that. So she
Oh
left to
my
go call the
goodness.
attorney to get it FedExed up before we went into surgery.
Wow.
But you're laying there, you're like, okay, well, here's what I was convinced of after I heard what the doctor shared with my wife. That next weekend was going to be my funeral. And I started playing the video. It's the front of the church. Everybody says nice stuff, right? Because that's what you do.
Yeah.
But what would they really say at the back of the church? What would they say a year later? People that knew me, my colleagues, my coworkers, my employees, people
Yeah.
I'd mentored. Oh, he was a good guy. What a bummer. I got to tell you, for me, I was like, you know what? I started thinking back to all these amazing people in my life that saw something in me that I didn't see in myself at the time.
Yeah.
They believed in me until I believed in myself more, and they pushed me to my capabilities. And I realized, you know what? If I survive, I get a chance to do that. I can be
Yeah.
that person. I can be the catalyst and facilitator. And that's actually why I started focusing on, instead of running companies, I started this to initially just to coach leaders, how to be that person that other people not only love, but just love to work for. How do you connect
Wow.
with your best self and connect to what's important to you, your purpose, your passions, and then actually be able to create the environment and the organization where you live that out? Because I truly believe that we can do good in the world through doing business. A lot of the things that we see right now in society, if people whether you're in business or government or education or the media or church, wherever you are and you're leading,
Yeah.
you can lead in a way that actually solves these problems that we're seeing. Even if it's small, it's in your organization, it's in your community, it's in your city. And
Yeah.
I don't think, government has a role to play, but if we depend on them, things are not going to get better. We can do that. So anyway, so I have this passion to just equip and inspire leaders to be their best selves and create a life so the use of that life outlives their life. And those are the kind
Wow.
of people that I love working with that have that perspective. Ones that
Yeah.
don't, that just want to grow the company for profit, because I can help a company grow. I've helped many companies grow 500, 600,000%. But I want to be
Yeah.
working with those leaders that also they want to grow their company and have a very profitable company in order to, if that makes sense, right? Because
No,
there's
it
a cause
does.
and there's a
Yeah.
passion also behind it. And I think that's also important for our employees. We're not just here to make a widget or provide a service, right? In doing this, guess what? We're also part of something bigger in the world, because when we connect what's important to us personally to what our company, our organization is doing, and I actually see that
Yeah.
I'm actually doing both things. Man, you can do that. You can create a team that's absolutely unstoppable, even through a time like we're experiencing right now.
I totally agree. I really do. And, especially with the story that you have, I'm so touched by what you went through, John, and, what your family endured, and, to see how you are today. And, I have to share on your website, you have your sizzle reel, for your
Hmm.
speaking. And when I watched it, I'm like, when you were talking and I saw the jet and everything that was going on in that video. And then you came out and you said, as far as you were just getting ready to take off and, you were trying to tell yourself, and you just said, don't launch. And
That's
I
right.
thought, all I can think of is, the anxiety, of going through that. And like you said, that horse accident was nothing compared to, your time in the service and, where you endured so much during that time. And here you are now, you're doing a wonderful job with, with your company Beyond Influence and the companies and CEOs that you're working with. Tell us, share a success story with maybe a company that you've worked with, and I know, in fact, let's go to one that you shared with me just before the podcast started, and you just finished the contract. Let's talk about that one.
Oh, that's a fun one.
For
There's
the
so
Air
many I could
Force.
share, but yeah. So, somebody that like I got mentored 30 years ago. I'm always seeking people to mentor. So I was mentoring a young man who had gotten out of the Air Force.
Mm-hmm.
And he said, do you know the Air Force actually brings in outside people like you to train their people? I'm like, what? So yeah, they actually do. And they spend a lot of money on it. So I got invited a few years ago to a capabilities brief. Some
Oh,
huge companies, Arbinger, Covey. I mean, I'm like, what am
yeah.
I doing here, right? It's me and one coach and an assistant. Like, how am I in this room? Well,
You deserved it.
at the end of that, we got awarded 19 contracts, and a year later, we
Wow.
were named a preferred leadership trainer to the U.S. Air Force, Shelley.
Wow, congratulations on that. That is, I mean, and they're very particular about who they work with. So I'm sure that that's such an honor to be able to do that and, have that kind of a contract.
It was, yeah. So we've done well, it's neat though, because the leadership to really make some changes to an organization, it has to be sponsored at the top, right?
Yeah,
If
that's
I'm,
true.
let's say an old white guy who's grew up in the very hierarchical leadership, right? Very direct, traditional command control leadership. And I want to change maybe how my managers are working with my people because I'm losing a lot of Gen Y and Gen Z because they don't like the culture. It's no longer, they used to say that I didn't leave a job, I left a person. Okay.
Yeah.
I think it's more than that now. Let's say I love working for you, Shelley. You're my boss. But I
Yeah.
look over there and I see Bob treating Donna not very well.
Mm-hmm.
Or I see Donna, working her heart out and she even works harder than me. And I'm the one that, you put my name in for a promotion, Donna wasn't even considered. They're looking at the whole environment now in addition to that relationship. And if we want to change how that is done, we have to change at the top. Well, the Secretary of the Air Force decided we're going to work really hard at changing our leadership culture to attract, be able to develop and keep our best people because
Yeah.
quite frankly, they have not been doing that very well. And I got to tell you, that was really refreshing for everybody. So we've been able to be a part of that, working with junior, new employees, working with first and second level supervisors from new managers to those folks that, their direct reports are managers to the
Yeah.
executive level. We've been able to do workshops at the Pentagon.
Oh, that is
We've actually flown all
fantastic.
over the world at different bases. But what we're seeing is, especially, as we're looking at the challenge of managing in this remote environment, they only had about 1% of their workforce that was working out of the house. Today, it's in some cases up to 90. So this is a huge change. And how do we maintain culture? How do we deal with conflict? How do we develop an esprit de corps? How do we actually innovate and be creative and stay connected? And their managers are really struggling with that. So we've been able to come in and do some workshops on exactly how to do that. And the feedback, I was telling you the feedback that we just did, it was a course of very senior leaders. The Air Force signed them up for 4 days of virtual training. So with everything else on your plate, imagine if you were just told you're going to go do 4 days straight, 8 hours a day of virtual leadership training.
Virtual. Yeah.
So I'm like, okay, well, you know what, team, we're going to rally. We're going to knock this out of the park because we've been doing this in person. We've done a lot of virtual training, but not for 4 days straight. And at the end of it, we had everybody, submit, responses and surveys. And what we got ranked was 9.92
That is
out of 10.
fantastic.
We had some
Wow.
fantastic comments, and now that has led to a number of follow-on work. So I
That
love
is-
coming in, like when we come in to speak, Shelley, like you're, like at a keynote, you're sharing a concept. It's really about, let's cast a vision and talk about an idea. It's not, and there's definitely I always try to make it practical and some key takeaways. What I love to do though is, from that point, coming in and doing master classes or workshops with the team to actually take some of those concepts and apply them. And then probably my favorite clients, I'm actually doing coaching work with the senior leaders, with the management team to really be part. I don't take on a lot of clients because I want to be partnered with them in this whole journey versus just kind of parachuting in, trying to turn a
Right.
couple levers and pop off. That is
Yeah.
just
Takes a
that never
deeper
fits for me.
level. Yeah. Deeper level of involvement and time. Yeah.
But that's been a blast. Thanks for asking about that. That's been super enjoyable.
Yeah, and especially, now with COVID times, like you said, it was 4 days of online, where a lot of people, and I was watching another podcast the other day, and there was a woman that was talking about, the virtual times and working with Zoom and, just people that are disconnected when they're, you see this tile of people or this mosaic of so many different people, and they're all doing different things. They've got a lot of different things going on in their background, and it's interesting to be able to do what you're doing in this time right now. And where do you see with a lot of the businesses that you're helping and working with, John, for 2021, what do you think is key for them to do now that's going to help them sustain and be successful in not just 2020, but going into 2021?
When people look back on this time right now, Shelley, they might not remember the decisions that you made. But you know what they're going to remember is who you were. I think right now, my advice that I would give to any leader right now, this is the
Yes,
time
let's hear
for
it.
us to really start seeing everybody who's part of our organization
Mm-hmm.
as fully human, to see their unique value, not as some object to get the work done or the task done or the project or the brainstorming on the strategy session. I think this is the time where we need to really focus on getting to know our people and understand their cares and their
Yeah.
concerns. I was talking to a client recently and I said, "Hey, this one of your key reports, a woman, how's she doing?" "Oh, she's amazing." And he started listing all the things that she was doing. She figured out how to do this, and when she's doing this and she's leading that. But I said, "Okay, well, how is she doing personally? What do you know about her life?" He goes, "Well,
Mm.
I don't. She's
Yeah.
always positive, she's always smiling, and she's getting all this work done." And I said, "Do you think it would be a good idea to maybe just not talk about the business, but ask her about what's going on?" Well, here's what he found out. She's totally stressed out. Her husband has underlying
Oh.
conditions, but she's an essential worker and she has to go into work.
Mm.
And they have also her mother lives with them, who's 85 years old. So
Wow.
think about this. She's required. She's all in. She's one of those employees you want to have. But guess what she's doing? When she's at work, we all do it, right?
Mm-hmm.
I'm all in, those great people, and we're smiling. And she
Yeah.
is she is like felt like she was just under a mountain of stress.
Gosh.
And guess
Yeah.
what? What if he hadn't asked that? There would have been a point, I'll guarantee, maybe that it just breaks,
Yeah, I
or
was gonna
she's not
say,
able to do
yeah.
what she was doing. And I said, wow. So he decided, and I thought this was so awesome. He cleared one of the busiest guys I know. He has over 85,000 employees, CEO of a big company.
My gosh.
He cleared, imagine, what people like that, what their schedules look like. That was
Yes. Yeah.
so impactful to him that he cleared his schedule and scheduled 30-minute meetings with every single one of his direct reports and every
Oh
single one
my
of the
gosh.
key people in the teams below that. I
Hmm.
really believe that that is the key to why they are actually doing so well right now. So there's a lot we could talk about, but I
Yeah.
think if you want a place
Yeah.
to start, that would be, if I were a leader today, that's what would be my focus.
And
Because
it's
when you
really,
go
oh,
ahead.
I'm sorry. No, I was going to say it's really, having that empathy piece where I think a lot of leaders and CEOs of companies, they are so busy and sometimes they forget that human element. And, kudos to you for, kind of enlightening him, because if he has a company of 85,000 and like you said, it starts at the top where, this leader now could probably get out to all of his, the direct reports as well as the managers within their company to start, really having that resonate within, the entire company, which could, essentially increase their, profitability. It could, definitely improve the overall operation of the organization.
Oh, I couldn't agree more. And I think, as that comes down, imagine, those folks that are new managers or those first level supervisors, they're watching what the people above them do and they're going to model
Hmm.
that. If it's
That's
only
right.
about, hey, what's the task list? What's the project update? Okay, next. Right. That's going to,
Mm,
you're going to, unless, and some of us probably you're not the same way, right? I've always taken an interest in my people,
I
but,
do. Yeah, I
but
do
you
the
know what?
same. Yeah.
That I really believe that first level supervisors, they are they are the key part of our employee experience. And if we're not
Yeah.
sowing time into teaching, training, and equipping our people that are in management how to not only get the work done, right, the
Yeah.
transactional piece, but also value the relation, and how do you build both at the same time? You know what? I think a company that might not have a product as good as us or a strategy as good as us are absolutely going to race past us in the marketplace because they have a much stronger foundation.
That's right. Yeah. No, and those are great points too, John. And I feel that, with your company, I know that, we've known each other for a little time. And I think any organization or company that, that is tuning into our podcast here, once we get it out there, we want to definitely make sure that they know how to reach you, and we'll make sure that all the notes are in, are in the show ending. And as far as, where do you see your company going in 2021?
Well, I have a book that's coming out soon, which I'm really excited about, Shelley. It's called
How
On
exciting.
Purpose with Purpose. Yeah, living
On
your best
purpose with
life.
purpose.
Yep.
Yeah.
Horst Schultz, the CEO of Ritz Carlton, wrote the foreword for me.
Nice. Very nice. Now, how did you happen to have that happen?
Well, you know what? I reached out to, I read his book, Excellence. It was phenomenal. And I reached out to him. I said, hey, would you come on my podcast as a guest?
Oh,
And he did. And it was oh my gosh, he's such a delightful man.
yeah.
At the end of our interview, I said, I'd love to do a part two. He goes, oh, I'd love to. So we did a part two. And then I
Oh
had
my
him on again.
goodness.
And we just,
Yeah.
so I just started, he gave me a cell phone number. So when somebody does that, I just reach out to him every
Yeah.
2 to 4 weeks, say hi, maybe just
Yeah.
send him a little video like I did with you, or just get
Yeah.
on a
Oh, I love
call.
those videos.
Yeah, and just, you
So
know what, we've just
personable.
developed a friendship. And then I
Oh,
said,
that
hey,
is fantastic.
I said, I don't know if this is appropriate. This could be a big ask, but I just wrote this book.
Yeah.
Would you mind writing the forward? He goes, oh, I could tell he wish I hadn't asked. He goes, I tell you what, send me
Oh.
the draft, and if I like it, I will.
Oh,
And
okay.
so he read the draft. He's like, "Oh my gosh, I couldn't put it down." And I'm
Very
like,
nice.
"So
Wow.
so where does it look like in the next year? We are growing the work that we're doing with the
Mm-hmm.
federal government based on the success we've had in the Air Force. We're doing a lot of work with small, medium-sized businesses. I have a couple clients at the Fortune 100 level.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if we're going to work on, growing that area. It's a lot of work for the team. I love it, but I think we can
Yeah.
make bigger differences at the below that, but we'll see.
Yeah.
We're doing we're focused on speaking. That's kind of an interesting world, as you know, right? Doing a lot
Yes.
more virtual work. I've done a lot of master classes, but I think where we look like in a year from now is the book is out. We're still doing a lot more speaking. We have a team
Yeah.
now of 7 people. I see that growing. So we're doing a lot more coaching, a lot
That
more
is,
working with groups, both in the private sector and public sector. And
yeah.
and the other thing that I think we're going to be launching soon, there's just such a big need, is some very specific training targeted for those first level supervisors, because I think that is
Oh,
an area
yeah.
that there's such a need. And I think we've done things in a way that's unique that also has some very measurable results with kind of our process. So that's what it looks like. I think a year from now is just we have, the revenue streams continue to grow. And I mean, my
That
whole
is
goal is, right,
fantastic.
if I can equip 100 people, I mean, like really in a transformation way,
Yeah.
that those 100 people can touch 100 people who I don't know, and all of a sudden I have 1,000 people
Mm.
who we've touched. And what if those 1,000 people touch 100 people? That's a
Just a
million
ripple
people.
effect. Yeah. A
So in
ripple
2 years,
effect.
that is really my internal vision: is what if we could actually do what we do so well that
Yeah.
a million people could have their lives impacted in a positive way in
Mm.
just the next, I would say, 2 years. So that is actually kind of the vision that's driving what we do. That's our litmus test to say, would this move us toward that, or is that just interesting? So
Wow.
that's kind of the path that we're on right now, Shelley.
Oh, that is fantastic, John. And I love to see all this success. And, congratulations on your new book that's going to be coming out. So we'll have to have a part two with Speaker Central too, I think,
Oh,
once
I
your
love
book
that.
comes out.
Oh, Sign
Yes,
me up.
and talk about the book.
Yes.
And congratulations on getting the forward too. I think that, that is something that is not as much, for the credibility factor, but I think more than anything that the relationship and friendship that you've built with him, and it'll continue,
Yeah.
to grow and expand, and who knows, there are so many things that can come from that. But no, that's awesome. And thank you for sharing that, with our audience. And one last thing I would love for you to kind of share with, with our audience, especially those businesses that want to do business with the federal government. What kind of tips would you give to companies that would like to do business with the federal government?
Be prepared to put in a lot of work.
Yeah.
It's not something that happens quickly. I would tell people this: there's if you just Google the initials PTAC, it stands for Procurement Technical Assistance. I can't remember what the C stands for. It's part of the Small Business Association.
Okay.
Everybody listening out there, if you actually want to look at the government has something called NAICS codes. Like if you're a doctor and you bill like certain things, so NAICS code is like leadership is under one NAICS code, like a part for an airplane is something else.
Yeah.
But here's the way it works is the government is spending literally hundreds of billions of dollars working with outside contractors. There is a requirement to work with veteran-owned, small business, minority-owned, women-owned businesses. There's mandates. So there's money that has to be spent with companies like, we're actually a disadvantaged veteran-owned small business. So if you get in touch with your PTAC, and if you just Google Small Business Association, then PTAC, set up a meeting with your PTAC. They're usually like my here in Colorado. It's a woman that was a retired Air Force colonel in contracting.
Wow.
Her entire job is to help private business figure out what they do, how to position it, how to sign up to be a registered contractor, all the pieces and parts that you need to be able to do that, and then what is the process to actually find the business as it's coming out, before it comes out, so that you can bid and win on it. And so the resources that are out there are fantastic, but it really takes some work and some consistency of effort, like anything else that's worthwhile. But I'll tell you this, on the leadership training aspect, we just pulled a report. It's just one base in the last 12 months. They have spent $1.7 million.
My gosh.
This is one Air Force base.
Yeah.
Now, half of that was a big contract with a Deloitte to come in and do a lot of re-engineering around HR. But there was a lot of that was much smaller stuff, like a company like I could bid and work on. And I'll tell you, anybody out there that's listening, whether you're selling software or cybersecurity or you're a machine shop, there are opportunities for you. And I would encourage people to explore it.
That's great information. And we'll even use some hashtags when we push the show out. But I'm so glad I asked you that, John, because I think that will help a lot of people in our audience. And how will people find you?
I would just encourage them to go to beyondinfluence.com. Everything is there. I'm on Facebook under John Ramstead. Twitter is J Ramstead. Instagram is, everything's under John Ramstead. You can find me everywhere. And if anybody wants to shoot me an email, I keep a number of appointments every week just for anybody that wants to talk that I could help and serve in any way. And that's at jramstead@beyondinfluence.com.
Oh, that's wonderful. Thank you for sharing that, John. And I know you to be a very humble, giving person. And I think when we first started our conversations, you sent a beautiful video over, and I thought, just for you to take the time and do that just really meant a lot to me, because it just showed me that you have, you're very humble, and I appreciate that. So, and thank you also for being on the show. And we're out of time, John, and we could go on and talk forever, but I know that when your book launches, I'd love to have you back on the show. And to our listeners out there, thank you for tuning in to this show. And again, you could find this on most of your podcast channels, and also YouTube, Facebook, and LinkedIn. And again, John, thank you so much for being here. We appreciate it. And
thank you, Shelley. I really appreciate the opportunity. It's been wonderful getting to know you, and I hope people get to know you and your backstory, because you've just done some really neat things and really walked through some big peaks and valleys, and it's just great to get to know you.
Oh, thank you, John. Likewise, I feel the same. And again, I think we're connected for quite a while here, even though you're in Colorado and I'm in California. Anyways, John, thank you so much. And again, to our audience, thank you so much for being here, and we will catch you next time. Thank you. Hey there, did you enjoy the episode? If you did, subscribe to Speaker Central.